You are live. That's what it's telling me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Thursday edition of our live YouTube show, Money and Mindset at 40 Plus, where we help you play big and conquer your money fears and stories through our own stories. And that's what we're talking about today with our good friend, Megan O'Neill.
Woo,
She's in the
woo, woo.
middle.
Hi, girl.
I am Sylvia.
I'm Jen. I'm Jenny.
And yeah, we're so excited today. We've been chatting with Megan now offline for a good 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, let's just press go, press live and continue these talks online because Megan is the go-to person when it comes to money stories and money beliefs and women. And she's going to delve into this today because she's got some goodies for us. And I am really excited, Jenny.
So how did you two meet?
As you know, we always start with a story, not a bedtime story, but
No.
a lunchtime story. Yeah, Megan and I think it's been, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years now. I maybe Megan, you remember, but
Well, it's always 6 degrees of separation, isn't it?
always. We have a good friend, Lara Wellman, and I met Megan, I believe, through Lara's group. And at the time, you guys might be surprised, and I've talked about it here before, I was not a visible person. I was invisible for some reason, and we're running a business that did not serve me well. So this is where I met the lovely Megan, and look at me now. She's helped me bust a lot of blocks that I had, and we're going to talk about those. So welcome, Megan. I'll get back to the story, but I just wanted to tell us a little bit about your story, Megan. How you've been serving women and talking about money for a long time.
I have. Well, I have been focused on beliefs, and my actual training is called Core Belief Engineering. So beliefs have been my jam for almost 20, actually more than 20 years now that I think about it. I got into this for my own mindset. I was struggling with my own beliefs. I was struggling at that time that I started to delve into the subconscious, and my mind was when I was actually trying to decide whether or not I would get married and continue in my relationship with my husband, because I had a lot of old beliefs about marriage and relationships, and they did not match who I was with at the time. So all the stereotypes and all the, the accusations and all the nuttiness that I was causing in my relationship, it was, I had this epiphany that it was really just me, that it was me and old outdated beliefs. So I ended up getting trained in this alternative method that I do that's just focused on deep-seated beliefs. And then as time went on and I changed my focus in my business, and I wanted to work with entrepreneurs because my dad was an entrepreneur. And at that point, I was working in the area of relationships. I was panicking one day about money. And it was just this common theme that I had. And I was having this sort of like, this really zoning in on my feeling. And it was a feeling of helplessness, and I hated it, and I was fed up. I hated that feeling. And so I just was like, this is it. This is ridiculous. Here I'm like the mindset person. I got to do some serious work on this. And I was that was it. I just started delving into money mindset because that's kind of always been my big thing is money. And what I've struggled with, interestingly enough, not relationships. And I was working in the area of relationships.
And there's so many issues with money and relationships. Right? You must have seen that all the time. I mean, that and housework, right? I mean, the two.
That's
the two
number two. No, that was number two.
It is.
Number two is number one is communication, like you guys will not be surprised. And number two is money. Because we grow up, and I know I'm probably jumping ahead, but we grow up very differently. Kevin and I, so just using Kevin and I, my husband as an example, he had a very different childhood and a very different philosophy around money. And so when you bring those two people together and, once you get it through like the rainbows and bubbles and you actually get together and there's child rearing and you're saying, no, I don't want the kids to spend money on that. And all real life mortgage, all that sort of thing comes into your life, your philosophy or your belief system, your mindset pops up. And there's nothing that causes more stress, I think, in a relationship. And funny enough, an accountant we know here in Ottawa, she and her husband love sitting down and talking about money. And they're just like, that's their strong suit, but they're both trained and they have really good money mindset.
Yeah.
So
And their
that
value, it's one of their top values, probably,
absolutely,
each of them, right?
absolutely.
So, because when someone values money or anything else and the other
Mhm.
person doesn't,
Mhm.
well, then you've got a rift right
Mhm.
there.
Well, and yeah, sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask Megan, I was going to ask you, for those of us listening, could you describe to me what it looked like in your house when Kevin and you would clash? Like what did it look like? Just so that our listeners can imagine related to their homes and their stories.
Well, what I think is very different between the two of us was that money was up and down because I had an entrepreneurial father,
Okay.
and because it came in and out, and it was very dramatic and it was uncertain.
Okay.
Kevin had a very steady father. His dad was an immigrant, self-made, and money was always a very logical thing in some ways to Kevin. So for him, there was no feeling of scarcity ever in his life. And so when, logically, most of us have a finite amount of money that comes in, say, every 2 weeks. Most people live like that. Even if you're an entrepreneur, you have an idea of what's going to be coming in.
Yep.
So if you think about it, money should be logical, but it's not. And so, I went on to do my own money mindset, and I kept talking to entrepreneurial women about it, particularly because that was their big block, was often investing money, receiving money. And I zone in on women in particular, but of course, money mindset is not a gender thing. It's clearly not a gender thing. And I think when you look at couples, and I would be literally in my office with couples on my big whiteboard I had, and I would be thinking, most of them were government because we're in Ottawa. Jenny and I are in Ottawa. Yeah. So there are a lot of government people. And every 2 weeks for like 40 years or whatever, they have pretty well the same amount of money. They have a pension. Like, it's a very logical approach, which is why they go into the government often, because they love the safety of it. Yeah. That's the mindset. That's the money mindset, right? Yeah. And yet it would never be a logical argument because people have different beliefs about where money should go.
Right.
So sorry.
Yeah, I'm interrupting because I have this visual of the squirrel from one of those movies that collects acorns, and so there's the one squirrel that's the Ice Age that's dropping the acorns, equally distributed points in a straight line, and then the other squirrel, which is you, Megan, right? Feast or famine, quick, grab all the acorns you can, right? And that visual, those two squirrels would have a heck of a time talking about where their acorns should go.
Well, yeah. And I also wasn't brought up well with money. Like, it's not just that my dad was an entrepreneur. It's that my parents had very different approaches to money. Okay. So mom was from a safety, scarcity. My grandparents talk about depression. They squirreled away all their money. Like, it was the typical conservative type of household. And then my dad was like, spent money like water. Like, I'd say, Dad, can I have money? And he'd go, just go to my pocket and grab some money. So the messaging and the beliefs and all the emotions and the tension that often happened with my parents, I created beliefs in my childhood. Right. And they weren't very good ones.
They're like, our beliefs and our stories are created before we're 8 years old.
Exactly.
Right? I launched that out there, but from youngsters. And I mean, Jenny and I, we've talked about this on other shows, right? Your money stories, your money identities, your money types. Yes. And those are what we see and who we learn from. So you're right. The grandparents, same thing, Megan, with me. My parents had very different money stories. Jenny, same thing, right? And it's funny that we all love that. I mean, this is where our common ground come together, where we do love talking about it and deciphering it and helping people with their money stories.
I'm very inspired, Megan, by that shift you made. And so for those of us listening to this call, I think it's important to note it's never too late, is it, Megan?
Oh my goodness, no, not at all. I mean, if you think about it, you have to come to a certain point in your life when you become aware of something that's wrong. Yeah. So sometimes it has to be dramatic, and sometimes you have to lose things. So for me, debt really triggers me. And it's not like I don't go into debt. I mean, I have a mortgage if nothing else, but there's certain things I think you have to get to a certain point with whatever. And that's why I think relationships are often come into question, say, for example, for women and men in their 40s. Well, your relationship with money is the same thing. If you think about relationships and you think about your relationship with money, then often it takes a certain event or a certain feeling. Like for me, I was like, I always have this feeling of powerlessness, and panic. And that for me was the big bulb that just set me off.
Yeah, and I think for me, and I would say for those listening, if you have questions for Megan, put them in the comments because we'll ask her and we'll address them. I started working with you, Megan, because my aha was, gosh, I either will go forward in this business or I won't go forward in my business. And if you're a business owner and you're the face of your business, but you can't show your face, you're going to be stuck, right? And I wanted to grow. I mean, some people might have been okay with that. But I, working as a business coach, see that a lot, where the visibility, and you talk a lot about the imposter syndrome. And I reached out to Megan probably at the beginning of the pandemic, probably, and saying, hey, Megan, I think we need to chat. I'm feeling, as I'm up leveling, I'm feeling all of this imposter syndrome coming up. And she said, yes, we see it. You've got all the degrees, Sylvia. I'm surprised that you're feeling this way. And I said, yeah, I'm just feeling that the noose, right? But going back to our first work together, you took me through an amazing process of seeing myself as different parts of me. And it was an interesting process of who's talking, which part of you is talking, who's not wanting you to be visible right now. And I think part of that, and you're going to talk about some archetypes in a minute, my perfectionism side of me, my younger perfectionist side of me, did not want me showing my perhaps older side out to the public, which was very interesting, right? So if anyone's dealing with visibility issues, it's a deep-rooted fear, and perhaps you can talk to that and a bit about your process.
So really the premise behind what I do is that the mind, it's essentially every child comes into the world with a very healthy set of beliefs. So if you ever remember when your kids we all have kids. So if you remember your kids in like nursery school and how confident they were, and they would walk around naked and they'd be like, I'm so great and pretty. And, their beliefs were perfect. And you just look at them and laugh, and all their natural inclinations and talents and everything that they were good at would come out. And there would be no little voices until they heard mom and dad. And so when we are at a certain age, and that's why using under 8, and we know scientifically that this is true, that your mind starts to develop big beliefs. So we learn about money, and you might observe your parents having a stress argument about paying the bills, or a fight, or you hear the expression, money doesn't grow on trees, or who do you think you are? I'm not going to spend that on you. That's too expensive. Right? All those messages that you guys already know about and you hear, well, that creates parts of your mind. And I call it your money mindset. Sure. So imagine that your mind is a big pie, like an apple pie, and it has all these little slices. And there are indefinite slices. There's a slice that represents your wife part, your mother part. When you guys are in your professional part, you have a very different mindset than if we're having drinks on the patio. And so your subconscious is always coming in and out of your conscious. So the best example I can use is when you're in the car, your driving subconscious part comes out, takes over, and you're with the radio and you're thinking about other things, and you have to think about where you're going. Well, that's the same with the money. You have money mindset. And so this money part of your mind, which has developed its belief system when you were a little kid, is on automatic. It comes up and takes over.
It's right. An automatic pilot, Megan. Right. Oh, no.
So I was having a conversation with a very, very well-educated, financially astute woman the other day, who, of course, has taken a hit in the COVID era, because a lot of service-based women have. And she went back to that feeling in childhood that is not rational. Right. And that's what was up. So when we think about changing our money mindset, definitely our mind is mutable. We can change it at any time.
Yeah. Our stories can change, like right today they can change. Yeah. There's part of
they're constantly changing. Right. Look at in your life where all the different areas where your mind, your story has changed.
I have a question. I know this isn't where we're technically wanted to go, Jenny, but I have 3 kids and they each have different money mindsets. They are 8, 10, and 12 years old. My older one couldn't really care much about it. He buys things once in a while and saves his money, spends his money, not really attached to it. My second one, I noticed it has a story where, is that too expensive, mommy? Is that too expensive? I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it myself. Do you need money for this, mom? I'll give you some. And I'm like, where? Like, I really pay attention to my words in the family. So we're not always, telling we don't have money for this or whatever. Cause then I was like, where is she getting this from? Cause it's I hope it's not from us. And then my youngest one can't keep $5 in her pocket. Like it has to, let's go to Toys R Us, mommy. I got to spend, I've got $5, let's say, and she never has any money. How is that? Like because they're three different, same parents, same stories with each of them.
Well, we all have siblings, the three of us. So we know that even though we were brought up in the same family, and maybe even a very similar, although I'm very different than my sister, we're all very different. And what I have always told parents who listen to me and start to go, ooh, when they hear like, oh, great about the childhood, they're kind of worried about what they have done to their children. I always say, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because you're
it's
always
fault.
And not only that, but you're always updating. You can always, no matter what age your child is. I tell this to my ladies who are in their 70s with, 40-year-old kids. You can always update your story. You can always update your beliefs. You can always be a role model to your kids. But one thing I want you to understand is that every child is going to interpret the information that their parent gets them in a different manner. Yeah. So if you heard your mom on the phone, and this is actually how beliefs can start. Your mom goes, well, I'm just going out for a minute, honey, to answer the phone. And then she gets caught on the phone and you're a little kid. You interpret your mother has been gone for like 5 days. And then all of a sudden you're like, I feel so abandoned by my mother. Oh. Your brother might be in the same room and goes, what do you mean? Like mom was gone for 5 minutes. Like, so, right?
So same thing with money mindset. Isn't that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear, I love those stories. And thank you for explaining about the same house, 2 different kids. I can relate to that with my sister as well, Megan. Tell us about these archetypes. And what I mean by that is, for those of us that are listening in, like I think they'd be asking, where do I start? Where do I start that shift? So tell us more about your archetypes and how you work through things.
So one of the things that I want everybody to walk away with from this conversation is the way in which you start to shift your mindset in any area is through awareness. And so often you have that light bulb go on like I did, and you realize that something doesn't feel good. It's often feelings that lead you to that. And so what I have done is I have worked a lot with imposter syndrome later. And I just had this kind of, once again, I had a big light bulb about because I worked with women most of the time, that I realized that imposter syndrome was much more insidious within us than I realized. And I created archetypes that I see within women. So 3 of them, I probably could do more as a matter of fact, as I sort of think about it, but the number 1 is Superwoman. And the Superwoman really identifies with action and is always in action. And in my experience, she identifies her worth through action. So if
Jenny,
I'm busy,
you frowned there. You frowned when you said that, Megan. She frowned because we were wondering. I was like, I know Jenny's a Superwoman,
right? But the messages in childhood, Jenny, often for Superwomen and especially for women, is that in terms of serving and being in action and contributing to your community and all of those wonderful things that makes women who they are, can go awry and can go into overload and can cause women and I think to be disconnected from themselves. So
and if I'm interrupting, but I'm going to interpret it, that my value is derived by my actions.
Right.
That's what I interpret.
Right. So did you read that thing where they said that women's badge of honors nowadays is exhaustion? And so we look at these women and we think, oh my God, how does she do it all? Like they were even I'm watching the Supreme Court nominee in the United States, and they're asked her, so who does the laundry now? This is crazy, but they were like going on and on about how she does it all. So we get this perception that these women actually do it all, which is probably false. She probably has quite an army of people who help her out. And I think she's the first one to admit it. And so what ends up happening is that if you're always in action, you tend to not necessarily always be able to connect with yourself and to understand what's going on. Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is like most women are Superwomen, by the way, Jenny. So you're not alone,
and
right?
we don't want to
Okay.
take the time, or we're afraid to take the time because of
Let's
what's going to come up, right?
let's move on. So let's move on.
Let's move to Sylvia
Oh,
now.
go ahead, Megan. There you go.
Okay, so the second one is perfectionist, and nobody except Sylvia will admit it. But she did my little test, because I have a little test to determine who you are. And nobody wants to admit they're perfectionist. And if they do actually get caught being a perfectionist, they kind of do a little peacock, like, okay, maybe I am a perfectionist.
No,
right?
but I was like, no, I'm not a perfectionist. I am not a perfectionist. I'm like, man, okay, maybe in some areas of my life, yes.
Well,
yes.
because you're an entrepreneur, because you're a business coach, often things like you have to produce content, you have to produce a lot of content. And so what happens with perfectionists is they often never get it out the door. Now, I know you've conquered this, but they tend to do it like 15 times, and that they check it and they check it and they check it. One of my clients who is a perfectionist, she wouldn't let other people. So in order for her to grow in her business, for example, she had to offload some of the little chores to people who she could pay to do it, because her time was better spent doing things that would pay more money. But she could not let the editorial process go on her, the content going out. And so what ended up happening, and the downside of this is that you're going to waste a lot of time, and you're going to do tasks that cost you money. So there's the money part of it.
Yeah,
right?
That's the control. So it's the control, right? It's not trusting other people to. And if we want to grow as business owners, if you're listening to this, if we want to grow, we shouldn't, I'm not should, but look at the list of tasks that you're doing and what can you give to other people. Yes.
Well, and part of the reason, the belief system behind the perfectionism is that they don't want to do anything wrong. That we're afraid of making a mistake. We're afraid of being found
judged,
out. Right. You're judged.
And
exactly.
I think, Megan, that was me about the visibility. Then you were saying they're all tied together. Why did you not want to be visible, Sylvia? Because someone might say that I'm bad. Okay, well, if someone says you're bad, what's going to happen, right? Well, they're not going to like me. Oh my gosh, I want to be liked, but we're not going to be liked by everybody. Now I don't give a flying hoot about all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And 70% is better than 100, right? I was like, if 70% good, out the door.
Yeah, and the third is the expert. So the expert is someone who often will look outside of themselves. And once again, this goes back to imposter syndrome, right? So looking at outside of themselves for that recognition, and that might come through continuing to get degree after degree, or certification after certification, or I have to take this e-course because I really don't know how to do this. And often these courses are, of course, we're always going to be upping our education. We're going to be continuing to educate ourselves, but you got to stop. And where the money part comes into that too, is that they often don't want to invest in anything other than those things. So I'm sorry, I'm taking a course, so I can't spend the money here. And then it's that constant, and to me, often the women who are the expert types, because they will not consider or call themselves an expert. Therefore, you're not going to get paid. If you can't call yourself an expert, if you can't call yourself a specialist, well, then you don't want to command that much of a fee.
Right.
And so it's problematic. And so what I think they think that I can allow myself to sit at the table if I have this outside recognition. Yeah. The irony is, of course, is that they probably have 15 degrees, right?
What I hear there, Megan, is the when. When I have that degree, then I will, in a future state, charge that, be that, call that.
Right. And so they also end up wasting time. Not wasting time. I'm sorry. But they end up spending a lot of their time. Oh, I've got to take this training. This is being offered. This freebie is being offered.
It's hiding. It's hiding. But I love taking classes, and I'm guilty of hiding sometimes. And I recognize myself in all of these, because the Superwoman and being busy, and one of my stories is I have 3 businesses and I can't do them all as I want them to be. And then the expert. Oh, I need another course. I need to learn about social media, and I need to learn about this. And then and then the perfectionist side. So yes. Yeah. These are great. You can take the quiz, everybody, on Megan's website. I'm going to put it here. It's meganoneil.ca.
I just want everybody to remember with each archetype. So when you look at the expert usually finds it easy to do well in school. You two did really well in school. Yeah. You did multiple degrees because your brain, naturally, you're going to want to do something that's easy and feels good. So it's not a negative to be an expert and want to take new things.
None of these are negative, but it's the awareness piece, right? That allows us to move forward and stop hiding behind other things, right? Jenny and I have talked about it, for Jenny to slow down and think, and that awareness piece. Yeah.
And someone just popped up. Someone just made a comment that they were really happy we were talking about money.
Stacy here. She says, I always appreciate
Stacy,
conversations like this. We need to be okay talking about money more. And Stacy is a big champion about talking about money.
Yeah,
she sure is.
It's wonderful, wonderful.
So I'm hearing, I want to repeat the 3 archetypes: the Superwoman, the perfectionist, and the expert. I agree with Sylvia. I see little pieces of myself. Tell me how do I start changing, Megan? If I'm listening to this and I can hear things I want to do differently, but what can I do?
So I think that for me, just when I think back to when I first started to really work on my mindset and my money mindset, it doesn't matter what type of mindset, but I spent a lot of time having to work on my money mindset, is that the first thing always is to become aware.
Okay.
So where are the patterns that you find? Is it the feeling like I had that I would feel, I don't want to pay this. I don't want to, like, I had the money in the bank, but I didn't want to pay it because I was afraid that if I did it, I wouldn't have money to pay next month. And it was just this feeling of panic. So here is a pattern. So you're looking at the patterns. And when you look at patterns, underneath the patterns are beliefs. Sorry.
I'm interrupting because I'm like, I have so many questions. So can I share something, Megan?
Sure,
would you mind?
Absolutely, yeah.
So with my business, I have been making this vision board, this future state. And one of the things I want to do is move to a place where, let's call it 75% of my work is in coaching. When I just put this out live on YouTube, so I'm accountable.
There you go.
Megan, I cannot get myself to sit down with my business numbers and figure out what that would actually look like.
Right.
What's going on?
Do you think, well, this is what I want you to ask yourself. If you were to have that level of success, is there any negative to it?
Oh, wow.
Because there is. And I'll tell you 150%. I do something that Sylvia knows called the benefit structure with my clients when I work with them. Because believe it or not, every time a person is stuck, whether it's with money, relationships, success, whatever it is, there's a benefit to staying in the place where you are. And so there's a little part of your subconscious, Jenny, that even though you're conscious, like, what the hell? Like, of course I want this. There's a part of your subconscious that's resistant. And usually the resistance is based on an erroneous, old, outdated belief.
Interesting. So the thing that's coming up, and again, we've always done these calls live because we wanted to co-coach, is safety. I'm safe where I am.
Yeah, well, it's your analytical brain that understands that you should be moving forward, but there's that old part of the brain, right? That reptilian part that is keeping you like, no, don't change. You can't change, Jenny. That's too scary. Don't change. You might lose everything. Oh my gosh, you know.
So one thing you guys need to remember, and anybody watching this, is that words are really interesting. I love words. So safety. So we could sit here, Sylvia, and I know what she means by safety, but it's subjective. Right. So I want you to dig on that word safety, because all the years I've been working with people, I've never taken the word, because people say, oh, Megan, I just want to have comfort, or I just want to have balance. And I'm like, balance? What does that mean? So awareness is, so looking at patterns is number one. And then what has really helped me, especially in the area of money mindset, and I think that who was it, Cynthia, who just jumped on, what women need to do, and what we traditionally and culturally have not done, is we have not talked about money. And we have not, we don't go to the golf course or the tennis court and say, well, this is what I'm invested in, or this is what I'm doing, and this is what I think I deserve. And there's a whole different culture that women have in particular. And so what we need to do in order for us to update our beliefs on money is to look toward people that we admire. And what do they believe? So if you have a girlfriend, or if you have a role model or a boss or whomever that you think has a very good hold on money, or at least has some aspect that you think is healthy, then ask them questions. People are happy to talk about this, to be honest.
I love
That's a good piece of homework there, Megan. I'm going to go and do that. Go and ask someone who you think has a great money mindset. And a woman. I want to go towards
even if it's fictitious, like even if it's someone that you saw in like a movie or Oprah, and you're like, what does, because I love Oprah. So what does Oprah believe about money?
Yeah.
and just do some research on what good money beliefs that they are programmed to have now.
Instilling. This has been a great show. We're already out of time, but thank you so much, Megan. We're going to have you come back. We're going to continue this conversation. If you want to reach out to Megan, take the quiz. It's super interesting. You get a whole results page after when you sign up. MeganO'Neill.ca. She's also on YouTube,
guys.
Has her own channel. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Megan.
Thanks for asking me, ladies.
Oh, our pleasure. Our pleasure. Like we said, we all keep the conversation going. Thank you to everyone listening. Jenny, what's up next week?
Next week, we are diving into gratitude. And actually, I have a little tiny piece of homework because that's the way I roll. Because I like action, right? Because action must provide value to you listening to this show as a superwoman. Take out your phone, send a small text message to someone that you care about and say, I'm glad you're in my life, or reference something specific. That tiny element of gratitude we'll pick up with next week and see how it went and how it made you feel.
That is amazing. I'm going to do that. Thank you, everybody. See you next week, next Thursday at 12. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.
Bye.